Good evening and welcome to the Malden Zone. My name is Carol Ann Desiderio and I'll be your host this evening to speak with members of the emergency management team for the City of Malden. Tonight we have Superintendent Dr. Dave DeRusi, we have the Director of the DPW, Bobby Knox, Public Health Director, Chris Webb, and we've got the Director of Emergency Management Services, Deputy Chief Tommy Walsh from the Malden Fire Department. With a lineup like this, one would expect to see Ron Cochran from the Mayor's office sitting in this chair, but he is not here tonight because he is still working feverishly with the Mayor, fine-tuning the State of the City address tomorrow morning. So we will be at Triangle. We're hosted, of course, by the Malden Chamber of Commerce with Ted Coates down at Triangle for the breakfast series. Starts at 7:30 a.m. If you can get down there and see the Mayor's address, we would love to have you. If you don't, we can, you'll see it right here at MATV because they will be here, they will be there filming it tomorrow morning for us. So, let me also just mention to you that if you're a regular member of the Malden Zone, you know that once a month the Mayor's office comes over and takes control of this seat. We have had Ron Cochran in this chair, Kevin Duffy, Kathleen Manning Hall, Karen Hayes, and I'm so proud to be here tonight to become a part of this group. I would also like to thank Fran Matuccio, the Malden Zone, the whole staff at MATV for allowing us to do this once a month and be here and talk to you about the things that we do at City Hall. I am the executive assistant to Mayor Gary Christensen, and in my job, it's actually kind of a three-part job for what I do. First and foremost, I'm the Mayor's assistant and scheduler, so if you're out on the street, you bump into the Mayor and you ask him for a little bit of time and he says, call my office and have Carol Ann lock it into my calendar. I'm the person that's picking up the phone and helping you to get that time to sit with your Mayor. I also supervise the constituent service representatives in our office, which is probably the most important thing that we do there because the Mayor's first priority is always good customer service must come first. So we try to do that each and every time that we pick up the phone. When that phone rings at City Hall, we are striving to give you the very best customer service that you can expect from your city government. Finally, I run all of the Mayor's events. You gotta love live TV because that's a little stage mishaps there, but that's all right. I'm gonna keep on going. Last year, you may have attended one of the Mayor's events. We had the summer concert series. We had swearing-in ceremony for the Malden Fire Department when we had 10 new guys come on, actually 8 new guys and 2 women come on. We had the Women's History Month celebration. We did a bowl-a-thon to benefit, the Changing Lanes bowl-a-thon to benefit the Golden Tornadoes Club. I was a part of all of the organization teams that put those events together. So along with many, many volunteers and lots of hardworking people, each and all of those events were sponsored by the Mayor's office. This year, coming up in July of this summer, 2013, you can expect to see another very special event coming your way out of the Mayor's office when our sister city from Malden, England, comes to visit us here in Malden, Massachusetts. It's going to be great. We're very excited of it. We've got the St. Mary's Choir coming in. They're going to do many performances for us. It's very historical, and we're very excited. So stay tuned for a lot of fun things coming from the Mayor's office this summer. With that being said, I also just wanted to tell you a little bit about my reputation here at MATV. A lot of the staff knows me around here as a crew member on Malden's Bright Future, which is hosted by none other than the Mayor's sister, coincidentally, Erica Israelson. I'm also the director on a little show called Ask the Mayor, hosted by the one and only Jackie Booley. However, tonight I'm here for a different reason. Tonight we're here to talk about emergency management, most specifically snow and the removal of it. So we're going to get right into it right now. My first guest, Superintendent of Schools for the Malden Public School System, Dr. David DeRusi. He is wonderful. Unfortunately, unable to be here with us tonight, but he took the time to meet with me one-on-one in his office straight from City Hall yesterday afternoon. So we're gonna stay with me while we shoot right over to the superintendent's office. So we're filming live today from the superintendent's office. I am sitting here with Superintendent Dr. David DeRusi. Thank you so much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So Dr. DeRusi, let me start by asking you the first question, most important question. Kids all over Malden want to know. Who is the one that makes the call for a snow day when there's not going to be any school?
Actually, believe it or not, it's a joint call. I work very closely with the members of the emergency team, citywide emergency team. And what we do is we talk back and forth constantly during a snowstorm or a snow emergency. And then at some point we come together and we ask the ultimate question: can students get to school? Is it safe for students to walk? Can teachers? That's sometimes the forgotten piece, is that teachers need to get to work. And now more than ever, teachers live in a wider range around the city. Some commute as far in as from New Hampshire. So you're always thinking, can we get teachers into the building? And then finally, it's all about safety overall. So the decision rests with 4 people and the mayor, and we confer. And then they'll ask me, okay, you have all the details, what do you think? And I'll say, if DPW is saying the snow is too deep, we can't get the parking lots cleared out in time, if the sidewalks are treacherous. And meanwhile, I'm in touch with other superintendents in the area, because we all talk back and forth. So it's like Medford, Malden, Chelsea, we're all emailing, we're texting, and then the ultimate call will be from that committee. So there's 4 of us that go in, so none of us have to go in alone.
So, and also nobody's taking the blame when the kids do find out they actually do have to go to school either on that day.
No, it's a joint. Again, I think superintendents want to work with the city. And if you take 30 inches of snow, the city was buried. They did the best job they could to move the snow around. It was just so much snow. It made sense at that point just to kind of close it down.
I'm glad you brought up that last blizzard that we got. It was one of those storms that hit us on a Friday. Kind of the middle of the day was when we were preparing ourselves for the most amount of snow to come in. I think I got home about 1:30 and there was already an inch on the ground or something like that. So what do you consider when you're thinking about letting kids out early, in the middle of a school day? How does that work?
Late start, early dismissal. Today in a city like Malden, that's difficult because you have so many parents that are engaged in working, or they may not be home. So a delayed opening, again, is designed not so much for staff to be getting to work, but to allow extra time for parents. But what I have found in other districts that I've worked in, the delayed openings are tough because parents still need to get to work. So there could be a chance that a delayed opening means students are being dropped off to school buildings where there might not be enough staff to watch after them. Now, to let anybody out early is the other piece, because with most parents working nowadays, again, and that's driven a lot. Some of our students, there's nobody there. So that Friday that you brought up was a good call, because it was either open, half day, and dismiss because that storm was coming in late in the afternoon, or just close them. The decision to close, again, fell not just with me, but with other superintendents and the emergency team. If we bring students in, how do we get them home? And if parents can't get to their students, then I have school buildings with principals, potentially with kids in them, maybe only 10, 15, or 20, until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. Now you're putting everybody at risk. So I can't get my staff home, I can't get kids home safely. And another factor people don't think about is the amount of transportation we have in Malden. So I have students that are in out-of-district special needs placements that range all over the state. They're not local. We have homeless students that I every day am bringing to Haverhill and back. So you look at, if I was to go with a delayed opening, how do I get those kids where they're going and back? And if I go with an early dismissal, again, how do I get those kids to and from those locations? So it's a tough call. If we can make the call to just close them, it's safer and it's better for everybody if we do that.
So since you've been in Malden, how long have you been the superintendent?
A year and a half.
A year and a half. I think maybe there might have been one time in that year and a half that you did actually have to close school early last year. What was the decision?
We didn't close early. That was the previous superintendent. I've had to deal more with hurricanes in my tenure than I have snowstorms. So my very first year here, we had a delayed opening first day of school due to a hurricane, but that was just for staff. And then this year we had 2 days due to a hurricane in October. So again, I haven't dismissed once we've opened, and I lean towards the idea if I could have the ability to close them, meaning the schools, I think it's safer and it's really better in the long run for everybody if you do that.
Better to close them.
Yep.
Yes, and so how are we looking? This was my question.
Yes.
The school days that we've lost so far this year, how are we looking? Are they built into the calendar? Are we going right till the end of June?
Good
What's
question
going to happen
again.
with that?
Right now, when the mayor and the school committee decided to remove all of the religious holidays out of the calendar,
Yes.
that freed up days. So we build in 5 extra days to every school year, just in case for
Yep.
snow. So let's say, I think right now, we are just at the 5. So we're still looking to get out, don't quote me on this, but I believe it could be June 20th. So we have wiggle room. The state, you can make up school right up until June 30th. It's July to July. July 1st is when you have to have whatever days made up. So right now, pending a good winter and we don't have to cancel anymore, we're right at the limit of the 5 that we've built in. We haven't had to go beyond that 5 yet.
Got it. So far, no families are getting worried about
No.
canceling school vacation trips or
Not
anything
at this
like that?
point, and we
Not
still
at
have
this
plenty
juncture?
of wiggle room in there should
Excellent.
another snowstorm happen, so.
Okay. Now, in the emergency situations aren't all just revolved around snow. We also have other things that you, in your emergency management team, have to discuss on a regular basis.
Right.
How often does your team meet to take care of precautionary measures and things like that?
Right now, the mayor has set up an emergency team through his office. As school representative, I'm there, and so is an assistant principal by the name of Peter Dolan, who is Linden assistant principal, who's well-trained and versed in school safety and school policy around safety. We've been meeting bi-monthly since October. So we've been reviewing from our end, the city is reviewing the police are reviewing their practices, but as a school official, we're reviewing ours. So we're looking at training for people in the district, administrative training around these topics, the potential of looking at some national models for training with regards to school safety. And the other piece is, some of our in-house, fire drill procedures, our lockdown, stay-in-place procedures, and we're working diligently at upgrading our policies so that we can really just offer those safer learning environments for kids, as well as staff and parents.
Yeah, I know that one of your highest priority, of course, to educate the children, but also to keep them safe while they're in your care and your custody during the school day. So just to let parents know what happens, God forbid, you're in a situation where you need a school lockdown. What kind of precautions? What can they count on the teachers doing in the sense of a lockdown?
Well, I think the confusion is when you hear school safety and you hear lockdown, you're always thinking of the shooter incident, like down in Connecticut, where there's a shooter in the building, or there's. But a school lockdown or stay in place can happen for a multitude of reasons. Let's say there was a bank robbery by one of the schools, and the suspect is on foot. When I get that information through the city command, I would then go right to the principals in that surrounding area and say, listen, go into a stay in place, don't let anybody out for recess right now. There was a robbery on whatever street, and the police are in pursuit of the suspect. So you just play it safe. That's not that the whole building's in immediate danger. That's not there's anybody in the building. You do that to prevent somebody that might try to get in that building. So what happens is people go on alert. So the teachers you're in a stay in place, which means if it's recess time, you're keeping the kids in.
Yep.
And you're a little bit more aware of who you're buzzing into the buildings. You may put somebody right out in the foyer to keep who's in, who's out. You let teachers know that we're in a position now where we're just playing a very cautionary role. Versus, if there was an active shooter in the building, totally different scenario. Let's say a gasoline truck's coming down Route 99 in Tips. Now you have gasoline flowing down the street. You'd go into a stay in place again.
Sure.
You don't want kids out. You don't want traffic in and out because you're trying to keep the kids safe while the city's moving on a gas spill of that magnitude. So I think much like myself as a parent, because my kids are no longer school age, but you're concerned when you hear the BB schools in lockdown. And the parents first impulse is I got to get to the school. I got to get to the school.
Got to get my kid.
But
Absolutely.
the bottom line is, if the school is in a lockdown, in that they're not going to let you in.
Right.
So it's better to wait, gather information, which we do release in time. I think the concern is parents want to know that, because of Twitter and Facebook, that news gets out ahead of us sometimes.
Right.
So I might hear of that bank robbery, suspects in pursuit, and just as a precautionary measure, notify my principal. But at that point, I don't know any of the details either. I just want to play it safe. I want my principals to take the safe route. I want the teachers to be aware. And that school's working just like they did, because all the activities going on outside of the school, we just want to make sure it doesn't. And then as time goes on and that situation unfolds and I get more information, then it's easier for us to get information out. But in the event it was a real emergency in that school, a perimeter would be set up and parents would be told where to go as a staging area.
Got it. So best advice for parents: your children are being taken care of. Our staff is on this. Every day. Emergency meetings on a bi-monthly basis.
Yep.
There are plans in place. The worst thing to do is to rush to the school. Stay in place, wait for the details to come out, knowing that the superintendent and the emergency management staff of the mayor's office are in control of the situation and handling it, and your kids are in very good hands.
Right.
Superintendent, thank you so much for meeting with me
was a pleasure.
today. Really
I appreciate
your
this.
time.
It was
This was
awesome.
great information.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Back, and I want to thank once again Superintendent DeRusi for meeting with me yesterday. Tons of great information that he gave us and shared with us, so thank you again. With me now, joining me, is the Director of the DPW, Bobby Knox. Thank you for being here with us tonight, Bobby.
Thank you for having me.
Bobby, so you've been very busy in the past couple weeks. We've got crazy snow that has hit Malden. As an administration, we didn't really have a ton of snow last year. But this year, nature made up for it. We've got blown away, massive storm, builds by the hour, awesome power. I mean, Bobby, how do we handle things like this?
Well, this was a historical event. This storm here was the blizzard of 2013. When we prepare for a storm like this, we have meetings with our staff to discuss a game plan, how much equipment we're going to have on the street. So this particular storm, we started out at 10 a.m. with a pre-treatment with 11 city sanders on the road. At noontime, we went to 35 pieces of equipment for scraping and salting. 11 of those which are city sanders and 24 are private contractors. At that time, it was also a snow emergency called, and we called in for a full plowing operation, which consists of 82 pieces of equipment, 61 contractors, and 21 city vehicles on the road at 4 p.m. The heaviest snowfall was between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. the next morning. Approximately 16 to 20 inches of snow fell. We continued to work hard through the night to try and keep the main arteries open. By 9 a.m. the next morning, 25% of my fleet was off the road due to damages. So, which made it very difficult to manage that part of the storm, losing 25% of your equipment.
Yeah, so that is a huge concern, obviously. So you've got men that need to go home and rest. You've got machines that are down. What are the costs involved that we're looking at for a storm like this?
The final numbers are not in yet, but the estimated cost for this storm is anywhere from $450,000 to $500,000. Approximately $50,000 in salt, $275,000 estimated for contractual services, another $65,000 for Department of Public Works staff, estimated $50,000 in damages to equipment. Our equipment is aged. We have 8 large city sanders, 2 which are 24 years old, 3 that are 20 years old, and another 3 that are 12 years old. The life expectancy of a sander that we use year-round, in the summer we take the sander body off and use it for other things, hauling and everything else, is approximately 10 years. So our fleet is tired.
So you obviously have gotten your money's worth out of these vehicles, but we're looking to hopefully replenish your supply. Is that right? I know that the mayor has recently submitted a capital improvement plan. Right now it's waiting for approval at the city council level. What is that going to look like for you in terms of help down at the DPW to attack storms like this?
It's going to be great because, coming into this job as a Director of Public Works, one of my thoughts was, the equipment that we do have was past its prime, and if we did get a tough winter, it was going to be very difficult to manage with these pieces of equipment. So we did put in a CIP through the mayor for the Department of Public Works, which spread out replacing sanders over a 3-year period. But after we've seen the results of some of the equipment on a large storm like this, we're going to reevaluate our request and look to add some additional equipment for the city of Malden.
So I know last night you were called in front of the city council to go speak in front of the city council. They had a lot of great questions for you. What do you think was the overall message that came out of that conversation from last night?
Well, I hope a lot of the people in the city realize, the situation that we deal with during a snowstorm, the staff, the other city departments, and the councils. I think the message that it gave, hopefully, to the residents was that this department, along with other departments, worked very hard during this storm. There are some things that we have to overcome, and there are some changes that we will make. We are going to reevaluate our snow plan and look to make some changes with some contractors and some additional things that we can change next year to give better services. But it also gave out the message what our equipment we were dealing with and our staff. When I was hired 20 years ago, the highway department had 50 employees. Now we're down to 20 that are budgeted, and on a regular everyday basis, if everybody is in work, we have 11. 4 are on long-term workman's compensation, and the rest are opening. So I don't know if the residents realize what we have for numbers down here, but I think last night that the message got out that this department does care about the city of Malden and doing a good job for the residents.
And clearly doing the best that you have with the men and the equipment and everything that you have to work with. So obviously, I mean, you guys were very tired. They worked around the clock during this storm. 5th biggest storm in Massachusetts history. I know you had some people that were very happy. You had some people that called down DPW, looking for a little more street widening. Tell me, what do you think, Bobby, that you did right? What are you going to do better next time? You touched upon it a minute ago. Do you have any specific ideas of how we can do this better next time around?
Well, first of all, the men and the women of the department did work. Some of them worked 45, 50 hours consecutively. So there is really no break, and the main thing is to try and keep up with it as best as you can. But a storm of this size, it's almost impossible to keep up with the snow. The visibility was down to almost zero. You couldn't see driving down the street. But we are going to reevaluate the whole system. Some things that I'd like to change. There's definitely some contractors that will no longer be working for the city of Malden after they're evaluated from this storm. I'm also working with the mayor's office on looking on some changes for next year for possibly some identification for the contractors' vehicles, possibly a beacon that goes on there, and actually turning my office into a snow operation with a computer where potentially maybe a GPS where we can locate each vehicle that's on the road during the storm, which would help our operation. So we are going to look over our plan, see where we can improve for future storms.
Excellent. And I understand that we've got snow reports, weather reports of more snow coming this weekend, possible 6 to 12 inches. I mean, how are we going to fare with what we're working with right now? Are you ready for this weekend?
We're ready. We have 11 city sanders that we own. Currently, right now, we have 8 back up and running, and the rest are out getting repaired. We will fill in the vacancies with contractors as needed on a regular 6 to 12 inch storm. We're set up to handle a storm like that, but this last blizzard is tough to manage.
I'm sure you'll do just great, and you always do. I have one final question for you today, Bobby. Before I came to work for the city, I used to see sanders out. The snow wasn't even flying yet. I'm wondering why they're wasting my tax dollars on sanding roads that don't have any precipitation on them. Tell me how you do this. What are people looking at when they see you out there before the snow gets there?
This is something that we added into the operations last season. If we have a good idea of when the approximate starting time is going to be, and it's going to be a plowable storm, a lot of times we'll go 2 hours previous to the start of the storm to get a base down on the hills and the main drags to give us some traction, and also when we're plowing up the snow afterwards, it peels up better. So it's a good base out there on our streets and our hills for the start of the storm. Now you have to watch when you put it down. You don't want to put it down too early. Generally, a couple of hours before the first snowflake.
So that is not wasting taxpayer, as I previously thought. You're actually pre-treating the roads and making it easier, safer for the cleanup afterwards. Right. And I know you're going to do great this weekend. Thank you for all that you do. Thank your guys for all that they do. And all of the guys outside of the DPW. You had Jimmy Cahill. You had a lot of men and women on the job with you during this blizzard.
Yeah, I was proud during this storm to see the different departments that stepped up to the forefront to help out the city of Malden. Cemetery Department, Jim Cahill, also the mayor's office. The mayor himself logged as many hours during the storm riding alongside of me and answering phone calls during the storm. Ron Cochran from the mayor's office, Paul Hammersley, Chris Webb, Tom Walsh from emergency management. All these department heads came together to help out the cause of the city of Malden. And I also would say that there are a couple of contractors, local contractors involved that we depend on, that are there from the first snowflake to the final cleanup. Joe Salinas of Joe's Welding, Malden Company, Louis Barretto of L&L Services, and also Brian Robinson from Robinson Landscaping. From the first sanding operation to the last snow removal of Linden Square on Wednesday night, they continue to come and give us pieces of equipment to help with our operation.
Excellent, excellent. We need all hands on deck when situations like that happen. Bobby, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I appreciate your time. Thank you for everything. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back with the Director of the Board of Health, with Chris Webb. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back and welcome Chris Webb. We have, Chris, you are the Director of Public Health at the City of Malden. You are the Director of Permits, Inspections, and Planning.
I am.
You are the Deputy Director of Emergency Management Services. Is there anything in City Hall that you do not do?
Vacuum.
Tell us a little bit about what each of those responsibilities require. How does all that tie together to be what you do?
Well, firstly, it started out with, I've been with the Department of Health for 20 years. And 10 years ago, I was appointed as Director of Public Health on the retirement of the last Director of Public Health. So as this administration came into office, there was a merger that was proposed. And my office was merged with Inspectional Services. So as being a senior department head, they asked me if I'd like to take on that responsibility as well in a management capacity. So I've taken that on, and it's been a great opportunity so far, and I think we're doing a good job of changing things around a little bit. We have a little bit more work to do there, but that's going well.
Yeah, you have some goals in place, and you guys are full steam ahead.
We are, and we've got an ambitious computer update that's going on. We're going to have a whole new database development program. It is coming. It's going to take some while for development, but this administration has been very generous with that, and it's going to show. It will show fruit probably in July. You know, the people out in this the community will get to use a web portal to check on complaints, inspections, and all kinds of various and sundry items that they don't currently get to do now.
Sundry items. Okay, so is this the InterGov software that you're talking about? So I'd like you to tell me a little bit more about it, and we're not just talking about snow removal here tonight. There is a whole emergency management piece that goes along with all of this. So how is this new technology, which we know that the mayor is big on technology, how is that going to aid you in the emergency management piece of things like this?
The main focus of this software with emergency management functions will be that this software will be in all police cars and fire trucks in the city. So when they pull up on a scene and they get to an address to look at the picture of that address will be there. Any permit, outstanding issue, or past outstanding issues that may impact what their services are there at that time will be on that screen for them to assess before they make contact with the homeowner or occupant, and it will then allow for referrals for special services after the fact. If it's a simple smoke in the house kind of thing, and they get the fire department determines, well, it's not a hazard per se, but the furnace needs to be inspected.
Yep.
They'll tag it, and then they can literally just press their screen and make the referral to the plumbing inspector. Plumbing inspector will then receive that, and he can put it into his workflow, and that process will speed up by, I think, at least 48 hours.
That's great.
Because it'll be instantaneous notifications.
And part of what you do also is, I know that you sit on the mayor's PPU unit, which is the public property unit, which is currently, has it expanded to commercial businesses as well as residential?
The focus, I think, was always that if there was a commercial property that needed that attention, that it would get it. We've only come into a few of those recently, and we're actively pursuing commercial property now, in so much as that the building inspectors are out doing the state inspections that are required annually, and some of our buildings are a little older, and so they haven't had the capital infusion that a lot of, some of the apartment complexes would have. So as a consequence, those inspections are leading them into the problem property unit, only in so much as that there's services that can be provided, grants and loans, and we can put more workflow as far as inspectors into those buildings with little or no prior notice. So they know they're on call for those buildings, and that seems to be working well.
So a big part of the PPU is to take properties, like you said, maybe we can head off the emergency, God forbid, fires or whatever, water mains or whatever, with a little bit of TLC ahead of time, and that's the purpose of the PPU, to get ahead of those things.
Really, the focus is to help whomever has possession of the property to find, get the tools they need, whether it be financing, grants. Sometimes it reverts to receivership, which is the last option for the city. The city actually takes possession of the property. We make an assessment of the work that needs to be done. Bids are taken out, and the work is completed. At the end of that, the property owner can then buy the property back, basically, by paying for whatever the city has put into it. And oftentimes now what we're dealing with are banks. So it's not every day that we're dealing with a homeowner now. The economy being what it was, and we're slowly coming out of that now. The banks had left a lot of properties in less than desirable condition, and a lot vacant. We have 49 vacant properties. So those are also in this, the PP unit on a side track, not the main focus of the group. But
so it's impossible for you to be aware of all of these houses which have been foreclosed on, which are empty. How do these houses come to your attention with the PPU?
I would say 90% of them come from homeowners living adjacent to one, or we've had a few where we've had actual people are squatting in one or two. We had those straightened out right away. But more often than not, it's property, the next door neighbor. They know when the property's gone vacant. They assume, there've been a few assumptions, that it's been vacant. People do travel for periods of time, and we can determine what needs to be done. And we welcome anybody to call us with that information, because we do want to see these complaints come in, and we address these things right away.
So how would somebody do that? First of all, what I'm taking from what you just said is, if you're going away, make sure your neighbors know that you're going to be out of town before they start reporting you missing.
Right.
But for those who have valid, real concerns, how are they contacting the PPU?
The best way to do it is just to call into the Permits, Inspections, and Planning Office at 781-397-7030, and let the person answering the phone, and let them know that you have a vacant property, and that all we really need is the address and a little bit of information as to why you think it's vacant. That just helps the inspector look for the same telltale signs you're seeing, and then we go through that, and we'll make a complete inspection of the building. We'll track down who the owner is, and then we make a corrective order. And if we can't do that, we find the bank. Typically, they register the property with us. There's a whole process for banks to do that. And then we just monitor the property, and because the banks or the property owner who leaves it vacant pays a fee in that registry, we use those fees to cut the grass, trim the bushes, haul away cars, whatever might be left on the property.
Important for the taxpayer to know that we're not just cleaning up people's property. This money is coming from somewhere, it's being reimbursed. The banks are being held responsible.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's
We're
not
not, there's
necessarily-
no tax dollars on the cleanup of these properties whatsoever.
Got it. I think that's important for people at home to know. So you do a ton of stuff, not the least of which is inspectors go out and make sure that snow ordinances are being taken care of as well. So I want to bring it back to that for a minute. Chris, I got to tell you, I don't drive to work anymore. I haven't in about 2 years, 2.5 years. I'm in the spring, I'm biking. In the winter, I'm walking or I'm taking the bus, and my biggest pet peeve is getting to work this time of year. It's like a game of Frogger. I'm in and off of sidewalks, I'm jumping over snowbanks.
Sure.
Please tell me that there is a city ordinance in place that tells people that they should be shoveling outside of their homes and businesses.
There is a city ordinance, and it does say that you had to shovel the sidewalk that runs in front of your house. We like to say from the driveway to the fence post. If you don't have a fence post, just where your property line is fine. But, and it's really because you need to have that foot traffic. You know, early on in its inception, it was mainly because, you know, you'd get to an incident, and it'd be maybe a fire, or maybe someone needed medical care, or just ambulatory care. But there was the front walk wouldn't be shoveled, or the front way actually wouldn't be shoveled. No one would shovel from their, where the snowbank is, through the walk and out into the street.
Yeah.
So we were hampered by that. So we would, make notice to people that in the neighborhood when that happened, that maybe because of the incident recently, so it grew from that. And it just became, more difficult for, I think, for the DPW to get into some of the smaller streets and courts where the cars park so close to the curbs and the curbs are so low, for them to get equipment in there. We've got trees planted now that we didn't have 20 years ago. Now they're
Sure.
full-blown elms,
Yeah, of course they
So
will.
those are impacts that it have as well. But it really builds community. It really eases the access. And for people who, like yourself, who commute by bike or walking or the train, there's so many avenues that people use, and it's by everybody's house. I mean, it's a very friendly walking community, and it should be more so, and it should be maintained that way. So that, and ultimately, too, really, when Mayor Howard was in, much to his credit, the issue really came up with kids walking in the street we had a storm that lasted like 3 days. And that storm really showed us a lot about what we need to do as far as approaches to schools and the outlying neighborhoods, because the kids disperse and now they're walking on the wrong side of the snowbank, and it's the most dangerous thing. The commuters, with the advent of the newer apartment complexes downtown, there's more pedestrians than we've ever seen downtown, and that's an issue. And I know someone's probably sitting out in Forestdale saying, well, how does that affect me? Well, it may not affect you, but it's going to affect your neighbor or somebody else who's commuting like yourself.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it has an impact. And is it tough? It is tough. And a storm like we just had, not the best time to roll this out for a new, for residents to see for the first time. But, you'll get to appreciate it when it's 3 inches of snow and you keep it nice and neat and clear. And you got a nice wide path and people can enjoy the neighborhood and, commerce goes on. So, and more importantly, the commerce does go on because the businesses downtown are held responsible for it as well.
Yeah,
So
it's not just homeowners.
It's not just homeowners.
The businesses have to
Absolutely.
take care of their sidewalk as well. And in addition to snow, also this week we've had a lot of melting and refreezing, so there's black ice that I'm noticing. And is that part of, are we responsible for sanding and
Well, we'd like to
maintaining?
see people sand, but again, it's really just the ordinance is implicit on snow removal, and it doesn't say to use sand or salt. But then again, there are barrels available, and if you need a barrel, call the DPW yard and they'll install one if they can justify and it's safe locating it. They like to locate them in certain spots, bases of hills, tops of hills. But if you need to know where one is and you want to salt or sand your driveway, ask where the nearest barrel is. You can call the DPW yard, they'll let you know.
So no charge. You can
No
just
charge.
run to your corner barrel,
During
grab
the
a little
storm,
bucket.
we had people come into the city yard while I was answering phones with their own barrels. Can I go get
Really?
some rock salt? Come on out. We took them out
Excellent.
there and they got their rock salt.
Another city service. Even I didn't know about
Yeah,
that. That's
yeah.
great.
Well, we don't want them pulling in with their dump trucks and pickups, but 5-gallon bucket, that's reasonable.
Oh,
sure.
okay, we can help out a resident with a 5-gallon bucket. All right, so what do you do in the case that it's now 4-5 days after the snow has stopped?
Mm-hmm.
You have to shovel in what, the first
You're supposed to have it done in the first 48 hours.
48 hours? Okay, so it's 2-3 days later. Do you issue citations, warnings? How do you let people know that we recognize that you didn't shovel and maybe you should have?
Our first contact is always informational, so we'll give you a copy of the ordinance and we'll explain it to you if the person has the time when we make the contact.
Yep.
If that doesn't work, or if we can't make contact and we're leaving it in the mailbox, we'll leave that same information in the mailbox. We'll leave a door hanger so you'll know who was there with their name on it. You give the call and the number on the door hanger, and we'll explain to you what you need to do. If after that, we keep a little tab of that. After that, if we go out the next day or that day after and make the rounds, we did over 1,100 contacts during the storm, after the storm. 48 hours after we started, we did a little over 1,100 contacts. Out of those 1,100, we had no citations written.
Really?
Most people get it. When you explain it to them, like, maybe you think it's unfair, but for all the reasons we've already talked about,
Yep.
it's really not. It's a safety factor for you and your family a lot of the time. If fire had to be there, police had to come to your property, they need that space to work in. So it's important to have it, if, God forbid, you need it, and that's the way we look at it. I mean, it is that simple, and it's really does speak to the long-term effect. I know we don't get a lot of folks don't get upset with it. You'd think they would.
You would think that they would, yeah.
We all read the online forums and they're upset, but
Yes, that's
the
absolutely.
majority
A lot
of
of bloggers
people
don't like us right now.
well, yeah, and maybe the people we speak to don't like us either, but they're always very nice, and they comply. We've had no issues, even in the commercial areas, Route 60, very good compliance. Did we have to make contact? Yes, we did. But when we did, it was generally a very positive response.
Okay, so in the morning when I'm grumbling, because I haven't had my full amount of daily caffeine, and I'm climbing over a snowbank trying to get to my bus stop, I'm wondering, why don't they tell these people? But you're telling me we made contact with 1,100 businesses and residents
Yes.
in the past week since the storm. So that's amazing to me. I had no idea that we actually were out there doing that. Who is doing that?
Well,
That comes from your
that was
department,
my
right?
staff, yeah.
Okay.
We have a database set up with all the permit holders and anybody we make contact with in the given year through a complaint or anything like that. So if we have contact with you, we have your email information. And because of that, we can roll out this information a lot quicker. We did 877, I think it was, email contacts in that first morning after the
Amazing.
storm. So those went out also to commercial properties. Then we went to the next level, which was our residential complexes.
Yep.
Non-owner occupied properties, things like that are in the rental unit inspection program, and those go out to them, and they were very responsive, we believe, and that was a big dent in the next 24 hours. And then it was down to the single-family homeowners or the two-family owner-occupieds that have life to live. They don't have staff, they don't have additional people,
Right.
They've got family.
Yep.
So I can't get my 15-year-old out there.
Okay, final question. I'm glad this hasn't been an issue this winter, but in the event that you do have to write that citation, what's the fine? What are we looking at on something like this?
The first fine you'll receive is $50.
$50.
The
So
next, in the next 24 hours, it's $100. The next,
goes up from there.
it goes up to $200.
That is your incentive to shovel. If I
Please.
have ever heard of one, you don't want that first $50 fine, so we're going to get out there and make sure that we shovel. Okay, Chris, thank you for the time that you
Absolutely.
spent with us
Thanks for having
tonight. You gave us some great information. I really appreciate it. Up next, we have Deputy Fire Chief Tom Walsh to talk about what he does as the Chief of Emergency Management in the City of Malden. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. We are back. Have been joined by Tom Walsh. You are the Director of Emergency Management Services for the City of Malden, as well as Deputy Chief of the Malden Fire Department. So welcome. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time very much. Could you please tell us a little bit about what you do in the capacity of the Director of Malden Emergency Management?
Well, on the emergency management side, you end up, you're a resource for the city on any natural or man-made disaster. So sometimes the smaller things will happen. Maybe people just have to be pointed in the right direction, or they just need a resource where it's helping them. Like we just had that fire on Converse Avenue, and we had to help facilitate, try to find some housing for individuals. So we may direct them to Department of Transitional Assistance, and we'll help them stay at a lodging until we can find them housing. And then other times, like the storm that just happened, initially we'll look at our reports, and we'll have what they call situation reports coming from the state, from MEMA. And then Chris and myself will follow that for a couple of days. And then we decide it's going to be a storm of any significance. We'll then start coordinating with the superintendent of the schools, the director of the DPW, the mayor, and then we'll start making up a strategy for how we're going to attack the storm and the resources we're going to bring in. On this past storm that we had, we brought 20 additional vehicles in during that storm from the state that helped clear the downtown, help with the schools, and also had assisted with the plowing.
Okay, so MEMA came in and helped us with that, which I didn't know. Maybe a lot of our residents don't know that when we can't always handle something that we're looking at, we do have the state and federal resources to help us in the event of severe emergencies.
That's correct. What happens is they have a pool of talent that we can draw from. The only thing is that because there's like this storm was of such historical proportions that everybody was drawing from it because everybody was depleted. And that's part of the thing is you have to deplete your resources to ask for the request. And I knew early on when I was talking to the Director of Public Works, Bobby Knox, that we were going to need some help with the vehicles. So we put the request in, and then they started to trickle in. But at one point, we had up to 20 vehicles, from the state, so which helped us, and we don't have to pay for that. I mean, we pay through our taxes and everything, but it's not like we have to write a check for all them. So,
yes, right.
Which was pretty good.
It's good to know that the resources are there to help us. Not with the MEMA piece of it, but the regular, you said we have to deplete our resources before we get the extra help. So my question is, where do our resources come from? How are emergency management resources funded in the city of Malden?
Well, initially the resources are for myself and Chris as Deputy Director, and we have a third Deputy Director who's retiring at the end of the month. Skip Duquet is a sergeant in the police department. We're out there and we're doing what we have. We have some small line item accounts which initially get us going, but basically it's through donations. The Mayor Christensen, also puts money into a fund like for fire victims and that sort of thing. We have donations that come in, like Lester and Peggy Moravitz from the cab company. They always donate money each year through the senior center. They're very generous people, and they donate thousands of dollars. So we always have somebody who comes in that gives us something.
If I could just say that in our experience with the Pleasant Street fire some years back, that was a huge fire. There were 61 people with homeless after that fire. And the city of Malden and the residents here were incredible. We needed something, all we had to do was open our mouths, and the community came in on that. It was incredible. And that's generally what we find is that if we have a large displacement, what we call the fire fund will oftentimes handle the bulk of the housing issues, but it's the clothing, the incidentals, and even food. I mean, no one wants to sit in a hotel room 24 hours a day while they're sorting out their lives. And a gift certificate to a local restaurant is always nice. And the community comes out in droves. It's always nice.
And when
so great.
Large numbers of people pitch in, it makes a little bit easier for everybody to kind of. I'm going to ask people at home, if you're watching, get a pen ready and a piece of paper, because in a minute I'm going to ask you who do they call if they want to make a donation for this past fire emergency, or so we're going to get to that in a minute. But you mentioned the fire. The most recent emergency we've had was Converse Ave. I think we had 3 families displaced.
That's correct.
So what kind of, are they okay? I mean, without going into too much personal detail about the families, No
No.
injuries, right?
No, there was no injuries.
Okay.
Somebody alerted them to the fire, so they got out of the building very quickly. And then the Red Cross assisted. Usually what we try to do is have Red Cross come in right away. And then what we'll do is, if these people can't get back into the house right away, we'll then try to provide them lodging for a few days. Sometimes maybe after the inspectors, or wire inspectors, or maybe the plumbing inspector checks out the house, they'll be able to get back into it. This particular house, we're not going to be able to do that, so it's owner occupied, so the owner will end up getting back in there at some point. But the other two tenants will probably have to, they're finding housing now. So, and that's where we were helping them. Red Cross put them up for a few nights. Now the city, the mayor, lets us use his fund, and then we go out there and let them stay at the hotel until we can find them additional housing.
And how do you go about doing that? Do you work with realtors, or how do we help
Well,
these people find
we have.
housing?
We
You
have.
Chris has a network that we use if we need it from the apartment houses that he deals with. If they can't find it through the Department of Transitional Assistance.
Yeah, the state's often very helpful with it. Depending on their income and what their resources are, that's an option. If they have resources, we have a good contact with the majority of the property owners in the city. We just send out again a mass email telling them what the needs are, what the prices they can afford are, and we've had great success with that.
That's
again,
wonderful.
the community comes
So
back.
again, you ask in this community, this great city that I grew up in, that
Yeah.
you guys love as well as I do, really comes and answers the call.
Every
That
time.
is amazing. So I'm glad to hear that those guys are going to get the help that they need, and that's wonderful. So tell me, we talked a little bit earlier tonight with Director Webb about the technology piece of it. I know Code Red is something that you use.
Code Red's one thing. We also, through the schools, the Connect Ed, to reach out to the children. We have what they call WebVOC, and that's our emails and stuff goes through to the state. Also phone, laptops, whatever it takes. But we're in constant discussion with the state, on, especially like on this storm. We'll have conferences going on repeatedly. But we also have different arms, like in the city. Part of our thing is the auxiliary police come under us. So they are out there if we need them. They assist us on many different things that we've had in the past. Also, the Malden Emergency Center, run by Kevin Tully and Chris Akers.
Yep.
They'll also come out if we have, say, you have a flooding issue. A few years ago, we had 200 basements in the city that were flooded, and those guys went out and worked 2, 3, 4 straight days and cleared up all the
Incredible amount of
Yeah,
work.
also a nonprofit organization. They're not funded by the city, if I'm correct.
No,
They do
that's
their
right.
own fundraising, so if
Right.
you've ever had your basement pumped by them and can throw a little thank you gift their way, I'm sure that's helpful, right?
Yes,
Again, it's the
Absolutely,
donation,
absolutely.
it's the,
Helps them with their training too and keeps them up to speed on all the greatest and latest techniques. So
Yeah.
it's great.
And then what we do is we get grants in from the state, and then what we'll do is provide them with, say, trash pumps, generators, so that when they go out to do the work they want to do, we provide them with that. But we also get money, and we've given, lighting towers to the fire department, to DPW. We've also given, if you see that signboard that the police put up there, we got that through a
Yeah.
grant. So we're always trying to do something to help the entire city, it's something we have.
and so who does the grant writing for the emergency management department?
Chris
Is
and
that?
myself.
You
Yeah.
do it
Yeah,
together?
Typically, we
Yeah.
do it together.
Okay, and do you have any that are out there right now that you can
We-
tell us about, be good
We
for the
have a-
city?
We have a $25,000 one. We're just waiting on a reimbursement on a 20 that we got. We just purchased, through the mayor, wanted to get the emergency center a vehicle, another vehicle for them, so we purchased a pickup truck for them, so they can get out there to the calls. And
And all equipment.
yeah,
Yeah,
so I mean, it's vital, and we get grants, what they call emergency grants, in through the state each year. And we're lucky, Malden keeps going up. So this year, for the 11 grant, we're getting 25,000. We probably should get that in a couple of weeks.
it's wonderful. That's
And we're
excellent.
pursuing that training grant. That'll probably, we think is going to be about $95,000, and that's going to be help coordinated training with the school department, police department, emergency management. Pretty much every city office, I think, will be somewhat involved with it, and it's going to be towards school safety and school intrusion and things like that.
Okay, so when I spoke yesterday with Superintendent Jerusi, we talked a little bit about lockdown situations and stay put situations and the little variances that a little bit different. So it's this kind of,
It's exactly along those lines. We're going to. It's a huge process. There's a lot of people to train. There's 6,000 kids in the school system. hundreds in staff. We need to train them up, and the best way to do that is to run training exercises. So for over the next year, maybe even longer, it's 18 months, we'll be running different types of training exercises, from tabletops to actual exercises, and at different speeds and different sizes, but all these things cost money. And the training for that, so that it stays with all these people that are going to be involved, is expensive. So we're working on that grant now.
That's exciting. So as a parent, I'm excited. I'm pushing for you guys to get
Thank
that
you.
grant and every possible grant, because I want to know that the children are safe when we send them to school, obviously. And again, we talked yesterday to Superintendent Jerusi about that, and the safety is the #1 priority for obvious reasons.
That's our biggest goal, and the thing is that with this particular drill, when we have this full-scale exercises, everyone should be trained well enough so that when anything happens, they'll be able to respond in a timely fashion and with knowledge of how they're going to do certain things when they get there, depending on what the situation is.
Excellent.
They'll always be able to revert back to that training.
Okay, excellent. It sounds exciting, and I hope to see that come to fruition. So a minute ago, I asked people at home to get a pen. Tell us if they want to make a donation for the Conversat fire or any other just emergencies in general, and help you in your drive.
Well, what they could do is make a check payable to the fire fund in care of the city, to the mayor's office, and then they'll put it into the accounts.
Okay, and they can send it right to the mayor, so that would be
Sure.
200 Pleasant Street, 6th floor. And if they have any questions about anything that it is that you do.
They could give us a call. We have 781-397-7058. That's our office, and that's right at the emergency center.
Your office works out of the emergency center? Oh, okay, great. I guess I thought you worked out of the fire department.
Well, we actually work out everywhere. But
Yeah, we do, yeah.
That's you.
That's where we
Yeah.
hang our hats in the event of an emergency.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, well, that's great. So we know where our guys are in the event of an emergency. Gentlemen, thank you so much once again. I appreciate your time tonight. I thank you for coming by. Bobby Knox, Superintendent Jerusi, Fran Matuccio, and the whole Malden Zone crew, thank you so much for letting us be here tonight. Kevin Duffy, my director, who mercifully didn't try to make funny faces behind the camera and make me laugh during the whole night. I appreciate that, because I'm sure I would have blown it if he did. Again, we've got tomorrow morning, Mayor Christensen is giving his 2nd annual State of the City address. That's going to be 7:30 tomorrow morning. If you aren't there in attendance to have the breakfast and join us at Triangle on Pearl Street, please make sure you tune into MATV, because they will be there filming it. And that's it. Thank you, and join us again next month.
Get out of the dock and into the zone.
Get out!